Hey guys, tonight we slip into the gritty, grimy world of the Middle Ages, where the air hums with the tang of sweat, smoke, and something you'd rather not name. Picture yourself trudging through a muddy village, boots squelching, as a whiff of unwashed bodies hits you like a rogue wave. You're wondering, how did people bathe only a few times a year and not just keel over? Spoiler, you probably wouldn't survive this, not with your modern nose for cleanliness. But they did, and we're diving into why. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Drop a comment with your location and local time. I'm curious where you're drifting off from tonight. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You're standing in a medieval village, circa 1300, and the first thing you notice is the smell. It's not just the livestock or the open gutters, it's the people. Bathing, as you know it, is a rare event here. Maybe a dip in a river once or twice a year, if that. Yet, these folks aren't dropping like flies from filth alone. The question isn't just why they bathed so little, but how they survived it. Let's start by debunking a myth. Medieval people weren't clueless about hygiene. They cared about cleanliness, but their world made it a logistical nightmare. Water wasn't always safe, time was scarce, and cultural beliefs turned bathing into a gamble. You're about to see why skipping a bath wasn't just laziness, it was a way of life. First, let's set the scene. You're a peasant, waking up on a straw mattress in a one-room hovel. Your clothes are stiff with yesterday's sweat, and your skin itches from dust and chaff. A quick splash of water on your face? Maybe, if you've got a bucket handy. But a full bath? That's a production. Hauling water from a well, heating it over a fire, and finding a tub big enough to squat in takes hours. Hours you don't have when you're plowing fields or dodging your lord's tax collector. Mainstream history tells us that most people in the Middle Ages prioritized survival over spa days. Bathing was a luxury, not a necessity, because resources like firewood and clean water were precious. You're not exactly living in a world with indoor plumbing or soap aisles. Now, here's a quirky tidbit. Some medieval folks believed dirt was protective. A layer of grime was thought to seal your pores against bad air, miasma, they called it, which they blamed for disease. Sounds wild, but it wasn't just superstition. Dirt could act like a crude barrier, keeping out fleas or lice in a pinch. Not exactly a skincare routine you'd pitch on TikTok, but it had its logic. Historians still argue whether this belief was widespread or just a quirky outlier among the learned. Did everyone think filth was a shield, or was it just a handy excuse for avoiding the hassle of bathing? Whatever the case, you're starting to see why a bath wasn't on the daily to-do list. You're probably wondering how they didn't all get sick. Well, they did, often. But not always because of skipping baths. Disease in the Middle Ages came more from contaminated food, bad water, or fleas than from body odor. Your skin, it turns out, is tougher than you think. It's got its own ecosystem, sweat, oils, and bacteria, that can handle a lot before things go south. You're not exactly glowing, but you're not dying from a lack of lavender soap either. And let's be real, when everyone smells like a barnyard, you stop noticing. It's like living next to a landfill, you just get used to it. Joke number 1, if you think your gym locker room is bad, try sharing a bed with 3 unwashed siblings and a dog. Let's talk about the practical side. Water wasn't always your friend. Rivers and wells could be foul, teeming with what you'd politely call organic matter. Boiling water for a bath? That's a rich person's game. Most folks didn't have the fuel or the time. and soap. It existed, but it wasn't the silky stuff you're used to. Made from animal fat and ash, it was harsh, expensive, and often reserved for laundry or special occasions. You might rub your hands with a rough cloth or scrape your skin with a stick to get the worst off. It's not glamorous, but it's better than nothing. You're starting to get why a bath was a once-in-a-blue-moon event. Then there's the social angle. Cleanliness wasn't just about health, it was about status. If you're a peasant, nobody expects you to smell like roses. But if you're a noble, you've got a bit more pressure to look clean, even if it's just for show. You might splash on some rosewater or change your linen shirt to signal you're above the muck. It's like medieval flexing, same energy as posting a filtered selfie. Joke number 2. Imagine trying to impress your crush with a fresh tunic when your last bath was Easter. Good luck. By now, you're probably grimacing, thinking about the itch and the stench. But here's the kicker. Medieval people were tougher than you. Their bodies adapted to the grime, their noses tuned out the funk, and their priorities were elsewhere. Survival meant food, shelter, and not getting trampled by a warhorse. Bathing. Low on the list. You're starting to see the bigger picture. It wasn't about being dirty on purpose. It was about a world where staying alive trumped staying fresh. And yet, they found ways to manage, ways you'll discover as you keep wandering through their world. You're still trudging through that medieval village, the air thick with the scent of wood smoke and something you're politely ignoring. Your boots are caked in mud, and you're starting to wonder how anyone could skip bathing without turning into a walking petri dish. Remember that dirt as a shield idea? Hold on to it, because now you're diving into why water itself was often the bad guy in the Middle Ages. People didn't just avoid baths because of time or effort. Water had a dark reputation, and you're about to find out why. Picture yourself standing by a riverbank. The water looks questionable. It's murky, with a faint shimmer of something oily, and you're pretty sure that's not just the sunlight. Upstream, someone's washing their clothes, and a few cows are wading in, doing what cows do. This is your potential bathwater, and it's also your drinking water, your cooking water, and probably the town's unofficial sewer. Mainstream history confirms that medieval water sources, rivers, wells, even springs, were often contaminated. Without modern filtration, you're rolling the dice every time you take a sip, let alone dunk your whole body in. People got sick from waterborne diseases like dysentery or cholera, though they didn't know the exact cause. They just knew water could betray you. Now, here's a quirky tidbit. Some folks thought bathing opened your pores to bad air. This wasn't just paranoia. Medieval medicine leaned hard into the idea of miasma, that invisible, toxic vapor blamed for everything from colds to the plague. Submerging in water, especially hot water, was believed to make you vulnerable, letting miasma sneak into your body. It's like they thought a bath was a VIP pass for disease. You're probably chuckling, but in a world without germ theory, it made sense. If you're already dodging death from a bad harvest or a bandit raid, why risk a bath that might poison you? Joke number 1. Imagine explaining to your medieval neighbor that you shower daily. They'd think you're begging for a curse. Historians still argue whether this fear of water was universal or exaggerated. Did everyone shun baths, or was it more about the practical risks of dirty rivers? Some scholars point to surviving records of public bathhouses, suggesting people weren't as bath-averse as we think. Others say those bathhouses were more for the wealthy or for special occasions, not everyday use. Either way, you're starting to see why water wasn't the sparkling savior you take for granted. It was a gamble, and most folks weren't feeling lucky. Let's zoom in on the logistics. Say you're determined to bathe. You've got a wooden tub, maybe a hand-me-down from your cousin who married up. You haul bucket after bucket from the well, a good half-hour's work if the well's not close. Then you need to heat the water, which means chopping wood, stoking a fire, and praying it doesn't rain and douse your efforts. If you're a peasant, you're doing this after a 12-hour day in the fields, and you've still got to feed your kids and mend your shoes. Even if you pull it off, the water's barely warm by the time you're ready, and it's turning gray from the first person who used it. Oh, yeah, water's shared. You're not getting a fresh tub unless you're royalty. It's like a medieval hot tub party, minus the fun and plus a lot of floating dirt. You're probably wondering how they didn't all die from infections. Well, some did, but not as many as you'd expect. Your skin's a pretty good barrier, and medieval folks had robust immune systems from constant exposure to their environment. Think of it like living in a petri dish. You either toughen up or you don't last long. Plus, they had workarounds. You might wipe down with a damp cloth, focusing on your hands, face, and feet, the visible parts. It's not a full bath, but it keeps you functional. Soap, when available, was more for laundry than skin, but you might use it sparingly for special occasions, like a wedding or a saint's day. Joke number 2. Trying to smell good for your betrothal with a chunk of lye soap? That's medieval romance at its finest. Then there's the cultural layer. Water wasn't just risky, it was symbolic. In the Middle Ages, cleanliness was tied to morality, not just health. If you're splashing around too much, some folks might side-eye you, thinking you're vain or worse, sinful. The church had a complicated relationship with bathing, which you'll dig into later, but for now, know that overzealous washing could raise eyebrows. It's like posting too many gym selfies. People start wondering what you're compensating for. You're learning that bathing wasn't just about getting clean. It was about navigating a web of beliefs, risks, and resources. By now, you're probably itching just thinking about it. But medieval people weren't wallowing in filth for fun. Water's dangers, real and imagined, made bathing a calculated risk. They survived because their bodies adapted, their priorities were elsewhere, and they had tricks to stay just clean enough. You're starting to get why a dip in the river wasn't worth the hassle, and you're curious about what else shaped their hygiene habits. Keep walking. The village is about to get even more interesting. You're still weaving through that medieval village, the air heavy with the musk of unwashed wool and damp straw. Your skin's starting to feel like it's collecting its own layer of grime just from being here. You've seen why water was a risky bet for bathing, but now you're about to step into a different kind of influence, the church. It's not just about dodging dirty rivers or saving firewood. Religion had a big say in whether you'd even consider a bath. Let's dive into how the church shaped attitudes toward cleanliness, and why it sometimes made you think twice before scrubbing up. Imagine you're standing outside a stone church, its bells clanging for evening prayers. The priest is a big deal here, not just for your soul but for how you live your daily life. The church in the Middle Ages wasn't just a spiritual guide, it was the ultimate authority on what was proper, moral, and safe. Mainstream history tells us that the church had a complex stance on bathing. On one hand, cleanliness was next to godliness. Ritual washing before certain religious rites, like baptism or major feast days, was a must. On the other, too much focus on your body could scream vanity, a sin that could land you in hot water with more than just your priest. You're starting to see the tightrope, clean enough to honor God, but not so clean you're obsessing over your flesh. Here's a quirky tidbit. Some monks and nuns took vows of filth to prove their piety. Ascetics, those hardcore holy folks, sometimes avoided bathing altogether, believing dirt and discomfort brought them closer to God. They'd wear scratchy hair shirts or let their skin crust over as a kind of spiritual flex. It's like medieval Instagram, but instead of posting gym gains, they're showing off their grime for divine cred. You're probably thinking that's extreme, but it set a tone. If the holiest people in town are proudly unwashed, it's no wonder regular folks didn't prioritize a weekly soak. Historians still argue whether the church outright discouraged bathing or if its influence was more subtle. Some say sermons warning against vanity and sensuality made people wary of public bathhouses, which could double as spots for, let's call it, socializing. Others argue the church was fine with bathing as long as it wasn't excessive or tied to pagan rituals, like the Roman bath culture they still side-eyed centuries later. Either way, you're feeling the weight of those sermons. If Father Gregory catches you scrubbing too enthusiastically, he might lecture you on pride. Better to keep your head down and your tub empty. Let's walk through a typical Sunday. You're up early, pulling on your least dirty tunic for church. Before you go, you might splash your face with water from a basin, partly to look respectable, partly because the church encourages a quick cleanse before Massachusetts. But a full bath? That's not on the radar unless it's a big holy day, like Easter or Christmas, when communal bathing might be part of the ritual prep. These rare dips were as much about your soul as your skin. You're not just washing off dirt, you're symbolically purifying yourself for God. It's like a medieval version of New Year, New Me, except it's new feast day, slightly less grimy me. Joke number 1. Imagine confessing to your priest that you bathed twice this month. Hope you're ready for a penance. Now, picture the church's bigger role. It's not just about sermons, it's about infrastructure. Monasteries and convents often had better access to water than your average village. Some even had aqueducts or private wells, making it easier for monks to wash their hands before meals or their feet in symbolic rituals. But you, a regular villager? You're lucky if the local stream isn't a cesspool. The church might preach cleanliness, but it's not hauling buckets for you. And let's not forget the calendar. The church dictated your schedule: fast days, feast days, work days. Bathing had to fit around that, and it usually didn't. You're too busy praying or plowing to worry about a spa day. Then there's the moral angle. Bathing, especially in public bathhouses, could get you in trouble. These places weren't always just for getting clean. They were social hubs where people gossiped, flirted, or worse, in the eyes of the church. If you're seen heading to the bathhouse too often, tongues might wag. Are you washing your body or your sins? It's like sneaking off to a sketchy bar in a small town. Everyone's got an opinion. Joke number 2. Picture trying to explain to your nosy neighbor that you're just at the bathhouse for the steam, not the scandal. By now, you're realizing the church wasn't just a backdrop. It was a major player in the bathing debate. It set rules, shaped beliefs, and controlled resources. You might want to be clean, but if the priest says too much scrubbing is vain, or if the only clean water is at the monastery, you're stuck. Survival meant balancing piety with practicality, and bathing often took a back seat. You're starting to feel the itch of that unwashed tunic, but you're also curious about how the peasants around you dealt with their daily grind. Let's keep moving. The fields are calling. You're trudging out of the village now, the church bells a faint echo behind you, as you head toward the fields where most folks spend their days. The air shifts from smoky to earthy, but the grime on your skin feels like it's soaking deeper with every step. You've seen how water's dicey and the church complicates things, but you're about to get up close with a peasant life, where dirt isn't just a choice, it's your constant companion. Let's dive into the sweaty, muddy world of medieval labor and why bathing was a rare escape from this grind. Picture yourself gripping a wooden hoe, breaking your back under a sun that's either scorching you or hiding behind clouds that turn the field into a bog. You're a peasant, and this is your reality. Dawn to dusk, working the land to feed your family and pay your lord's taxes. Your hands are calloused, your clothes are patched, and your body's coated in a mix of sweat, soil, and whatever flew off that ox you're steering. Mainstream history tells us peasants made up most of the medieval population, 80 to 90%, and their lives were defined by physical toil. Bathing. That's a distant dream when you're spending every waking hour plowing, sowing, or harvesting just to survive the winter. Here's a quirky tidbit. Some peasants used mud as a makeshift bandage. Got a cut from a rusty sickle? Slap on some damp earth. It sounds like a health hazard, but medieval folks noticed that certain soils could stop bleeding or soothe wounds. Modern science backs this up a bit. Some clays have antibacterial properties, but you're not exactly running to the spa for a mud mask. It's more like a desperate hack when you're miles from a healer. You're probably wincing, but in a world without Band-Aids, you take what you can get. Joke number 1. Imagine telling your boss you're late because you had to DIY a mud poultice. Good luck with that excuse. Historians still argue whether peasants were as filthy as pop culture paints them. Some say they were caked in dirt 24/7, too busy or poor to care about hygiene. Others point to evidence of basic grooming, like combs and linen undergarments, suggesting they tried to stay tidy within their means. Either way, you're feeling the weight of their reality. Bathing isn't just about access to water. It's about time, energy, and priorities. You're not soaking in a tub when you've got to milk the cow, mend a fence, and pray the frost doesn't kill your crops. Let's walk through a typical day. You're up before dawn, the air chilly and damp. You splash your face with water from a bucket, if it's not frozen, because your hands are too grubby to touch bread. Breakfast is quick. Bread, maybe some cheese if you're lucky. Then you're off to the fields, where you're knee-deep in mud or choking on dust, depending on the season. By noon, your tunic's sticking to your back, and your hair's a nest of straw and sweat. A bath sounds nice, but where's the time? You've got to finish this furrow before the sun sets, and then there's the Lord's share to deliver. Even if you had a tub, heating water means burning wood you need for cooking or staying warm. It's a brutal math problem, and bathing always loses. Now, let's talk about your home. You're living in a one-room hut, maybe with a dirt floor and a thatched roof that leaks when it rains. Your bathroom is a corner with a bucket or a quick trip to the bushes. Privacy. Forget it. You're sharing this space with your spouse, kids, and maybe a goat or two. Setting up a bath means kicking everyone out or dealing with an audience. And that water you hauled? It's for drinking and cooking first. If there's any left, you might wipe down your face or feet, but a full dunk is a fantasy. It's like trying to plan a spa day during a power outage. Good luck. Joke number 2. Picture inviting your neighbors over for a bath party in your hut. They'd bring pitchforks, not towels. Then there's your body's own defenses. You're tougher than you think. Your skin's used to this life, producing oils that keep it from cracking despite the dirt. Your immune system's been in boot camp since you were born, fighting off whatever's in the air or on your hands. You're not immune to disease, far from it, but a layer of grime isn't your biggest threat. Starvation, injury, or a bad fever are way higher on the list. You're starting to see why peasants didn't obsess over baths. Survival was about food and shelter, not smelling like a meadow. By now, you're probably itching to jump in a shower, but these folks didn't have that luxury. They lived in a world where dirt was inevitable, time was scarce, and energy was for work, not washing. They survived because their bodies adapted, Their priorities were ruthless, and they had small tricks, like that mud bandage, to keep going. You're beginning to wonder how the nobles up in the castle dealt with this, and whether their cleanliness was all it's cracked up to be. Let's keep moving. The manor's just over the hill. You're leaving the muddy fields behind now, your boots heavy with clinging dirt as you approach the looming stone walls of the Lord's manor. The village's stink of sweat and livestock fades slightly, replaced by the faint whiff of herbs and polished wood. You've seen how peasants live, caked in grime from endless toil, but now you're stepping into the world of nobles, where cleanliness was supposed to be a status symbol. Or so they'd have you believe. Let's peel back the polished facade and see how the upper crust really handled hygiene, and why their baths weren't as frequent as their egos might suggest. Picture yourself slipping into the great hall of a castle. Tapestries line the walls, and a fire crackles in a hearth big enough to roast a cow. The lord and lady sit at a high table, their clothes gleaming with embroidery, their hands suspiciously clean compared to yours. You'd think these folks are bathing daily, right? Wrong. Mainstream history tells us that even nobles bathed far less than you'd expect, maybe a few times a year, just like the peasants. The difference? They had the resources to fake cleanliness better. Clean linen, scented oils, and a knack for staying out of the mud made them look pristine, even if their last bath was months ago. Here's a quirky tidbit. Some nobles used bathing as a performance. They'd stage elaborate washing rituals before guests, dunking their hands in silver basins filled with rosewater while servants fussed over them. It wasn't about getting clean, it was about showing off wealth and refinement. Think of it as medieval Instagram flexing, but with fewer filters and more lavender. You're probably smirking, imagining a lord splashing his face dramatically while his knights applaud. But it worked. Clean hands and a fresh tunic signaled you were above the rabble, even if your armpits told a different story. Joke number 1. Picture a noble bragging about his bath, while you're choking on his week-old sweat vibe, high class, low hygiene. Historians still argue whether nobles were actually cleaner or just better at the illusion. Some point to records of castle bathhouses or portable tubs, suggesting the wealthy had more access to bathing. Others say these were rare events, reserved for special occasions like weddings or knightings, and that nobles relied on dry grooming to maintain their image. Either way, you're noticing the gap between perception and reality. That lord might smell better than a peasant, but it's not because he's soaking in a tub every night. It's because he's got tricks you don't. Let's follow a noble through their day. You're shadowing Lady Eleanor, who wakes in a canopied bed with linen sheets, a luxury you, the peasant, can only dream of. She doesn't hop into a shower. Instead, a servant brings a basin of warmed water, maybe scented with herbs if she's feeling fancy. She washes her face, hands, and maybe her neck, but a full bath? That's a production, requiring servants to haul water, heat it, and set up a wooden tub draped with cloths for privacy. It's not happening unless there's a big event, like a feast or a visit from the bishop. Even then, the water's likely shared among family members. First the lord, then the lady, then the kids. It's like a medieval car wash, but with more status and less soap. Now, let's talk about those tricks. Nobles had access to linen undergarments, which absorbed sweat and could be changed more often than outer clothes. You're stuck in your one scratchy tunic, but Lady Eleanor's got a fresh shift every few days. She might also dab on rosewater or clove oil to mask odors. Think of it as medieval deodorant, but with a price tag that could feed your family for a month. Her hair's combed with bone combs, maybe sprinkled with powdered herbs to keep lice at bay. It's not a bath, but it's enough to keep her looking clean in public. Joke number 2. Imagine Lady Eleanor spritzing herself with rosewater while you're dodging fleas. Same era, different budgets. Then there's the social pressure. Nobles were expected to look the part, especially at court or feasts. A dirty face could ruin your reputation faster than a bad jousting score. But looking clean didn't always mean being clean. You might wear a high-collared gown to hide a grimy neck or rely on heavy perfumes to overpower the funk. Public bathhouses existed in some towns, and nobles might visit them for show, but they weren't daily hangouts. Plus, bathhouses had their own risks: gossip, thieves, or worse, accusations of immorality. You're starting to see why even the wealthy didn't bathe as often as their status suggested. By now, you're realizing the nobles' clean image was more smoke and mirrors than actual hygiene. They had better tools, linen, oils, servants, but they weren't soaking in hot tubs every night. Their survival, like yours, depended on tough skin, a strong immune system, and a culture that didn't prioritize baths. You're curious about what other tricks people used to stay fresh without water, and how they managed to keep the stench at bay. Let's keep walking. The village is full of surprises yet. You're back in the village now, the castle's stone walls fading into the distance as you weave through narrow lanes, dodging a stray chicken and the ever-present muck. The noble's rose-water-scented charade is still on your mind, but you're about to discover how regular folks, peasants, artisans, maybe even a cheeky tavern keeper, kept themselves from becoming walking compost heaps without diving into a tub. Water's tricky, time's tight, and the church is looming, but medieval people had clever workarounds to stay just clean enough. Let's explore the world of dry cleaning and the quirky tricks they used to dodge the bath while still surviving. Imagine you're in a cramped market square, surrounded by stalls selling bread, wool, and dubious-looking meat. The air's a mix of spices, sweat, and smoke, and you're rubbing shoulders with folks who haven't seen a proper bath since last Easter. Yet, they're not all reeking like a forgotten gym bag. Mainstream history tells us medieval people relied on dry hygiene methods, techniques that didn't need buckets of water or hours of prep. Think of it as their version of a quick wipe down with baby wipes, except with rougher tools and a lot more grit. These tricks were born from necessity, and you're about to see how they pulled it off. Here's a quirky tidbit. Some folks used vinegar as a medieval face cleanser. They'd dab it on with a cloth, believing it cut through grime and kept skin fresh. It wasn't just for salad dressing. Vinegar's mild acidity could kill some bacteria, making it a surprisingly effective hack. You're probably imagining the sting and the smell, like splashing pickle juice on your cheeks. Not exactly a spa vibe, but when your alternative is river water with a side of cow runoff, vinegar's a win. Joke number 1. Picture trying to flirt at the market with vinegar breath, medieval charm at its finest. Historians still argue whether these dry methods were widespread or just regional quirks. Some say they were common across Europe, with every village having its own spin, herbs in one place, vinegar in another. Others argue these were stopgaps for the poor, while wealthier folks leaned on linen and oils, like that rosewater trick you saw with Lady Eleanor. Either way, you're starting to notice how creative people got when a bath wasn't an option. It's like they were MacGyvering hygiene with whatever was in arm's reach. Let's walk through some of these tricks. You're at home, too tired to haul water after a day of haggling or hoeing. Instead, you grab a rough linen cloth, maybe a scrap from an old tunic, and give your face and hands a good scrub. No water, just friction to scrape off the worst of the dirt. If you're lucky, you've got a bit of fat-based soap, harsh as sandpaper but good for spot cleaning. You focus on what shows: hands, face, maybe your feet if you're feeling fancy. It's not a full-body glow-up, but it keeps you from scaring the neighbors. You might also comb your hair with a wooden or bone comb, not just for looks but to dislodge lice or bits of straw. It's like a medieval multi-tool, part grooming, part pest control. Then there's clothing. You're wearing a linen shift under your wool tunic, if you can afford it. Linen's a game changer. It wicks sweat and can be washed, or at least aired out, more often than your heavy outer layers. You swap it out when it starts to feel like a second skin, which might be every week or two if you're doing okay, or never if you're scraping by. Nobles had stacks of these shifts. You've got maybe two, and one's got a hole. Changing your linen was like hitting the refresh button. Same dirt, new packaging. Joke number 2. Imagine bragging about your fresh shift when it's just the less stained one. Medieval fashion goals. Herbs were another go-to. You might tuck a sprig of lavender or mint into your clothes, or rub crushed herbs on your skin to mask odors. Markets sold bundles of sage or rosemary for this exact purpose, and if you lived near a forest, you'd pick your own. It's not deodorant, but it's better than nothing. Some folks even chewed parsley or cloves to freshen their breath, important when you're bartering face-to-face or trying to charm the baker's daughter. These little hacks added up, keeping you just presentable enough to function in a world where everyone's a bit ripe. Your body's doing some heavy lifting too. Remember that skin ecosystem from earlier? Your natural oils and bacteria are working overtime, balancing out the grime. You're not squeaky clean, but you're not falling apart either. Plus, the social bar was low. When everyone's got a bit of funk, you blend in. It's like showing up to a party where nobody showered. Suddenly, your vinegar wipe down makes you the belle of the ball. Joke number 3. Picture a village dance where everyone's fresh from herbs and hope, noses off, vibes on. By now, you're seeing how medieval folks survived without regular baths. Dry scrubbing, linen swaps, and herbal hacks kept them going, even if they'd fail a modern sniff test. They weren't clueless, they were resourceful, working with what they had in a world that didn't make cleanliness easy. You're curious about when they did bathe, and what those rare moments looked like. Let's keep wandering. The village is about to get festive. You're still meandering through the village, the market's bustle fading as you catch a whiff of something new, wood smoke mixed with a faint hint of stewing herbs. The grime of daily life and those clever dry-cleaning tricks are still on your mind, but now you're stumbling into a rare moment when the tubs come out and the water flows. Bathing wasn't an everyday affair, but when it happened, it was often tied to festivals or special occasions. Let's plunge into the world of seasonal bathing rituals and see how these communal soaks were less about hygiene and more about community, celebration, and maybe a little chaos. Picture yourself in the village square on a crisp spring morning, just before Easter. The air's alive with chatter, and a crowd's gathering near a cluster of wooden tubs steaming in the sunlight. It's not just any day, this is one of the big ones, a holy feast that calls for a rare collective scrub. Mainstream history tells us that medieval bathing often synced with the church's calendar or seasonal rhythms. Major holidays like Easter, Christmas, or Saints' Days were prime time for communal baths, especially in towns with public bathhouses or rivers that weren't frozen solid. These weren't just about getting clean, they were social events, like a medieval block party with suds. Here's a quirky tidbit. Some villages held bathing races during these festivals. Young folks would sprint to the river or bathhouse, competing to be the first to dunk and earn bragging rights, or maybe a free ale. It was less about hygiene and more about flexing your speed and enthusiasm for the occasion. You're probably picturing a soggy, giggling mob splashing through the mud to claim victory. Not exactly a spa retreat, but it turned a rare bath into a game. Joke number 1. Imagine slipping in the race and face-planting in the river, first to bathe, last to impress. Historians still argue whether these communal baths were truly widespread or more of an urban luxury. Some say rural peasants rarely had access to organized bathing events, relying on rivers or makeshift tubs only when the stars aligned. Others point to chronicles describing village-wide dips during festivals, suggesting even small communities got in on the action. Either way, you're feeling the buzz of the crowd. This isn't just about washing off the winter's grime, it's about marking a moment, whether it's a holy day or the first warm week of spring. Let's dive into the scene. You're elbow to elbow with neighbors, everyone stripped down to their shifts or less, depending on the vibe. The tubs, big enough for 2 or 3 if you squish, are filled with water hauled from the well and heated over fires. If you're in a town, you might be at a bathhouse, its steamy rooms lit by flickering torches. The water's not crystal clear, it's already cloudy from the first few bathers, but nobody cares. You're sharing the tub like it's a communal soup pot, and the goal is to soak, not to sterilize. Soap's rare, but someone might pass around a chunk of lye-based goop that burns more than it cleans. You're splashing, laughing, and trying not to think about what's floating past your knees. The church looms large here. Easter baths, for instance, were tied to spiritual renewal. You're not just washing your body, you're prepping your soul for Mass, symbolically cleansing yourself of sin. It's like a double-duty ritual, hygiene and holiness in one go. Other baths might mark secular milestones, like midsummer festivals or harvest celebrations. In some places, Lord sponsored these events, footing the bill for firewood or ale to keep the mood festive. It's a rare treat, and you're soaking it up, literally and figuratively. Joke number 2. Picture your Lord tossing coins for the bathwater like he's funding a hot tub, medieval VIP energy. But it's not all fun and games. Communal bathing had its downsides. Privacy's non-existent, and if you're shy, tough luck, everyone's watching. Bathhouses could also be gossip hubs, where rumors spread faster than fleas. And those fleas, they love a warm, damp crowd. You might leave cleaner but itchier, trading one problem for another. Plus, the water's a breeding ground for whatever ailments your neighbors brought along. You're starting to see why these baths were special occasions, not weekly routines. It's a calculated risk, cleaner skin versus a potential cough or a side eye from the village busybody. Your body's handling it better than you'd expect, though. That tough skin you've built up from months of dry scrubbing and grime is shedding some of its crust, and the warm water feels like a luxury, even if it's murky. The social boost is real too. Shared baths knit the community together, like a soggy team-building exercise. You're swapping stories, settling grudges, or maybe eyeing that baker's apprentice across the tub. It's not about getting squeaky clean, it's about feeling human again, if only for a day. Joke number 3. Imagine proposing at the bathhouse. Nothing says romance like shared bathwater and a lye soap ring. By now, you're drying off, your skin tingling from the rare scrub, but you're wondering why these moments were so fleeting. Why not bathe more if it feels this good? The answer lies in more than just logistics. It's about beliefs, risks, and a world where survival trumped sparkle. You're curious about the medical ideas that shape these choices, and what people thought dirt and water did to their bodies. Let's keep wandering. The village healer's hut is just ahead. You're weaving through the village again, the festive splash of those communal baths still lingering in your mind as you catch the faint scent of herbs wafting from a nearby hut. The mud under your boots is a reminder of the grime you can't escape, but now you're stepping into a world where dirt and cleanliness weren't just practical issues, they were medical mysteries. Medieval people didn't have germ theory, but they had plenty of ideas about health, and those shaped how often you'd even think about bathing. Let's dive into the strange humor-based medical theories that made skipping a bath seem like a smart move for survival. Picture yourself ducking into the healer's hut, a dim space cluttered with drying herbs, a cauldron simmering with something that smells like regret, and a shelf of jars holding who knows. The healer, a wiry woman with sharp eyes, is sizing you up, muttering about your humors being out of balance. Mainstream history tells us that medieval medicine was rooted in the theory of the four humors: blood, phlegm, yellow bile, and black bile. Your health depended on keeping these in harmony, and bathing could mess with that balance. Too much water, especially hot water, was thought to throw your humors out of whack, making you vulnerable to everything from fevers to melancholy. You're starting to see why a bath wasn't just a chore, it was a medical decision. Here's a quirky tidbit. Some healers prescribed dirt as a cure. They'd rub specific types of soil or clay on wounds, believing it drew out bad humors or sealed the body against evil airs. It's like that mud bandage you heard about in the fields, but with a mystical twist. You're probably grimacing, imagining a healer smearing mud on your scraped knee while chanting about bile. It sounds nuts, but some clays did have mild antiseptic properties, giving this weird remedy a grain of truth. Joke number 1. Picture going to a medieval doctor with a cold and getting a dirt facial instead of chicken soup. Talk about a gritty prescription. Historians still argue whether these humor-based beliefs directly discouraged bathing or just made people cautious. Some say the fear of disrupting humors was a major reason baths were rare, especially among the sick. Others argue practical barriers, like water access or time, were bigger factors, and medical theories just justified the status quo. Either way, you're feeling the healer's stare as she warns you against soaking too long. A quick wipe down might balance your humors, but a full bath? That could flood your body with phlegm or overheat your blood. No thanks, you'd rather not tempt fate. Let's walk through a visit to the healer. You've got a nagging cough, maybe from that festival bath where you shared water with half the village. The healer doesn't suggest a soak. Instead, she hands you a cloth soaked in vinegar and herbs to wipe your chest. It's supposed to cool your blood and chase away the sickness. If you're lucky, she might burn some sage to clear the air of miasma, that bad vapor everyone blames for disease. Bathing's rarely on her list of cures unless it's a ritual dip for a specific ailment, like a skin rash that needs a soak in oat-infused water. Even then, it's a one-off, not a habit. You're starting to get why medical advice leaned toward staying dry. Then there's the bigger picture. Medieval medicine wasn't just about humors, it was about the body's balance with the environment. Cold water could shock your system, hot water could weaken it, and any water could let in miasma if you weren't careful. Doctors, or the local wise woman, often recommended wiping down with cloths or using herbal pastes instead of submerging. These were seen as safer, less disruptive ways to clean without throwing your body into chaos. It's like choosing a protein bar over a full meal, quick, effective, and no risk of overdoing it. Joke number 2. Imagine your healer prescribing a vinegar wipe down and calling it cutting-edge medicine. You'd want a second opinion. Your body's still holding up, though. That tough skin you've got from months of grime and dry scrubbing is a natural shield, and your immune system's been battle-tested by everything from bad water to flea bites. The healer's advice, weird as it seems, aligns with survival. You're not dodging baths because you're lazy. You're following a logic that says less water, less risk. Plus, the social vibe backs this up. If the healer says baths unbalance your humors, and the priest says they're vain, you're not exactly rushing to the river. It's a team effort to keep you dirty but alive. By now, you're realizing that medieval medicine wasn't just quirky, It shaped how people saw their bodies and their world. Bathing wasn't a health boost, it was a potential hazard, best saved for special moments or dire needs. You're curious about how this played out in the streets, where filth wasn't just on your skin but all around you. Let's step back outside. The village's sewers, or lack thereof, are calling. You're stepping out of the healer's hut now, the sharp tang of vinegar and herbs clinging to your nose as you re-enter the village's muddy lanes. The air hits you like a wall, wood smoke, rotting scraps, and the unmistakable whiff of human waste. You've seen how medical theories kept baths at bay, but now you're wading into the heart of medieval filth, the streets themselves. Towns weren't just dirty, they were a sensory assault, with open sewers and stench shaping daily life. Let's navigate this mucky world and see how people survived in a place where cleanliness was a pipe dream, pun intended. Picture yourself dodging a puddle that's more than just rainwater. The street's a mix of dirt, straw, and things you'd rather not identify, with pigs rooting through piles of refuse nearby. Mainstream history tells us that medieval towns had no proper sanitation systems. Open gutters ran through streets, carrying waste, human, animal, and otherwise, to the nearest river or low spot, where it sat, festering. If you're in a bigger town, you might have a cesspit or a latrine, but they overflowed regularly, especially after rain. You're not just avoiding baths to save time or balance your humors. You're living in a world where the environment itself is a health hazard. Here's a quirky tidbit. Some towns had gong farmers, folks paid to shovel out cesspits in the dead of night. They'd cart the waste to nearby fields or rivers, often under cover of darkness to avoid complaints about the smell. You're probably imagining a guy with a shovel, muttering curses as he wades through the muck. It's not a glamorous job, but it was essential, and a reminder that even medieval people knew filth needed managing, even if their methods were crude. Joke number 1. Picture applying for the gong farmer gig. Worst job interview ever, but at least you'd get the night shift. Historians still argue whether the stench was as bad as we imagine or if people just tuned it out. Some say the constant exposure made villagers nose blind to the worst odors, like living next to a dumpster and forgetting it's there. Others point to records of complaints, lawsuits over overflowing latrines or fines for dumping waste in the street, suggesting people cared about the mess, even if they couldn't escape it. Either way, you're holding your nose as you sidestep a suspicious pile. The stink's not just a nuisance, it's a clue to why bathing took a back seat when the whole world around you was a health risk. Let's walk through a typical street. You're in a market town, where houses lean over narrow lanes, blocking the sun and trapping the smell. Chamber pots are emptied out windows, sometimes with a shouted warning, sometimes not. If you're lucky, you dodge the splash. If not, you're wearing someone's breakfast. The gutters are supposed to channel waste to the river, but they're often clogged with mud, bones, and worse. You might pass a tanner's shop, where animal hides soak in vats of urine and lime, adding a special kick to the air. It's like living in a landfill with a side of chemical burn. Bathing might make your skin feel better, but it's not solving the bigger problem of the world around you. Then there's the survival angle. You're not dying from the smell, though it's tempting to think you might. Diseases like dysentery or typhoid spread through contaminated water or food, not just the air's funk. Your body's adapted to this chaos. Your immune system's been in overdrive since you were a kid, fighting off whatever's in the slop you call a street. Plus, you've got those dry cleaning tricks from earlier, vinegar wipes, linen shifts, a quick comb through, to keep the worst at bay. It's not ideal, but it's enough to keep you going. Joke number 2. Imagine trying to stay fresh when your street's an open sewer. Your best bet's a clothespin and a prayer. The social side matters too. Nobody's judging you for smelling like the village because everyone does. The butcher, the baker, even the priest, they're all part of the same aromatic symphony. If you're splashing on too much rosewater or scrubbing too often, you might stand out as vain or weirdly obsessive. It's like showing up to a casual party in a tuxedo. Why bother when everyone's in the same muddy boat? The real focus is on avoiding the worst hazards, like drinking from a fouled well or stepping in something that used to be dinner. By now, you're realizing the stench and filth of medieval towns weren't just background noise, they shaped how people approached hygiene. Bathing couldn't fix the open sewers or the pigs in the street, so why waste the effort? You survived by toughing it out, using small tricks to stay functional, and keeping your priorities on food and shelter. You're starting to wonder how your body held up under all this grime, and what natural defenses kept you from keeling over. Let's keep moving. The answer's closer than you think. You're still picking your way through the village's mucky streets, the stench of open gutters and rotting scraps clinging to your nose like an unwanted guest. The chaos of medieval sanitation, or lack thereof, has you wondering how anyone stayed alive in this mess, let alone skipped baths for months. You've seen the practical and cultural barriers to bathing, but now you're zooming in on the unsung hero of survival, your own skin. Let's explore how your body's natural defenses held the line against all that grime, and why you didn't need daily showers to keep death at bay. Picture yourself pausing by a low stone wall, scratching an itch on your arm where dust and sweat have formed a gritty paste. Your skin's not exactly glowing, but it's tougher than you give it credit for. Mainstream history, backed by modern science, tells us that human skin is a remarkable barrier. Its outer layer, the epidermis, is packed with dead cells that act like armor, while sweat and sebum, your body's natural oils, create a protective film. In the Middle Ages, without frequent washing, this natural ecosystem thrived, shielding you from minor infections and pests better than you'd expect. You're starting to see your grime as less of a health hazard and more of a rugged ally. Here's a quirky tidbit. Some medieval folks believed sweat itself was cleansing. They'd let it dry on their skin, thinking it flushed out toxins or bad humors through the pores. It's not as crazy as it sounds. Sweat does carry away some dirt and bacteria, and its saltiness can deter microbes. You're probably imagining yourself glistening after a day in the fields, feeling oddly proud of your natural cleanse. It's no bubble bath, but it's a free defense mechanism in a world without soap aisles. Joke number 1. Picture bragging to your friends about your sweat-based skincare routine. Medieval glow-up, zero effort. Historians still argue whether this reliance on natural defenses was a conscious choice or just a happy accident. Some say medieval people understood their body's resilience intuitively, trusting sweat and oils to do the job. Others argue they had no choice. Limited water and time forced them to lean on biology, with beliefs about sweat or dirt just rationalizing the reality. Either way, you're feeling the weight of your unwashed tunic, but you're also noticing your skin's not falling apart. It's rough, maybe a bit scaly, but it's holding up against the village's filth like a champ. Let's break down how this works. Your skin's top layer is constantly shedding, sloughing off dirt, dead cells, and some bacteria before they can cause trouble. Underneath, your sebaceous glands pump out sebum, an oily mix that keeps your skin supple and mildly antimicrobial. Sweat adds another layer, flushing out pores and creating a salty environment that bugs like bacteria or fungi don't love. In the Middle Ages, without harsh soap stripping these defenses, your skin's ecosystem was in overdrive. You're not immune to cuts or infections. Those could still spell trouble, but the everyday grime? Your body's got it covered. It's like having a built-in hazmat suit, medieval style. Now, Let's talk about the environment you're in. You're trudging through a world crawling with microbes, from the muck in the streets to the fleas on your neighbor's dog. Your immune system's been training for this since you were born, exposed to low doses of pathogens that toughen it up. Modern studies suggest this hygiene hypothesis applies here. Constant contact with dirt and germs primed medieval immune systems to fight harder. You're not invincible, but you're better equipped than a modern germaphobe dropped into this village. Those rare baths you took during festivals didn't hurt, but they weren't make or break for survival. Joke number 2. Imagine explaining to a medieval healer that you shower daily. They'd say you're washing away your strength. Then there's the social angle. Nobody's expecting you to smell like a rose garden, so your natural odor, sweat, sebum, and all, blends into the village's background funk. If you're wiping down with a cloth or changing your linen shift, you're already ahead of the game. Your skin's doing the heavy lifting, but those dry cleaning tricks you picked up, like vinegar wipes or herbal rubs, give it a boost. Lice and fleas are still a pain, but you're combing them out or using herbs to keep them manageable. It's not a modern skincare regimen, but it's enough to keep you functional and socially acceptable. Your body's resilience isn't foolproof, though. Deep cuts, bad water, or a plague-carrying flea could still take you down. But the everyday dirt, it's not the killer you thought. Your skin's natural barriers, paired with a battle-hardened immune system, let you survive months without a bath. You're starting to appreciate this gritty armor, but you're also wondering about the risks of those rare baths, especially in crowded bathhouses. Let's keep moving. The village's social scene is about to get steamy. Joke number 3. Picture your skin throwing a party for surviving another unwashed week. Guest list, sweat, sebum, and some very confused bacteria. You're weaving through the village again, the memory of your skin's gritty resilience still fresh as you catch a whiff of wood smoke and damp straw. The streets are buzzing with chatter, and you're heading toward the bathhouse, its steam curling into the chilly air like a siren's call. Those rare festival baths were one thing, but now you're diving into the social risks of bathing, where getting clean could cost you more than just time and firewood. Bathhouses were hubs of community, gossip, and sometimes trouble, and you're about to see why a dip in the tub came with a side of danger. Picture yourself standing outside a squat wooden building, the bathhouse, where laughter and splashing echo through the cracks. The air's thick with steam and the faint tang of herbs, but there's an undercurrent of something else, suspicion. Mainstream history tells us that bathhouses, especially in larger towns, were social hotspots in the Middle Ages. They weren't just for washing, they were places to meet, deal, and sometimes misbehave. But with that came risks, disease, theft, and a ruined reputation if you weren't careful. You're starting to realize that bathing wasn't just a physical act, it was a social tightrope. Here's a quirky tidbit. Some bathhouses doubled as makeshift brothels. In certain towns, they were notorious for extra services, with bath attendants offering more than just a scrub. You're probably raising an eyebrow, imagining a shady corner where whispers and winks replaced soap and water. It wasn't every bathhouse, but the reputation stuck, making them a target for church crackdowns and village gossip. Joke number 1. Picture sneaking into the bathhouse for a quick wash and leaving with a nickname you didn't ask for. Medieval drama at its finest. Historians still argue whether bathhouses were more about hygiene or socializing. Some say they were vital for community health, offering a rare chance to wash off months of grime. Others argue their social role, deal-making, flirting, or worse, overshadowed any cleanliness benefits, especially as moralists railed against their sinful vibe. Either way, you're hesitating at the door. The steam's tempting, but the crowd inside makes you wonder if it's worth the risk. Let's step inside. The bathhouse is a dim, humid maze of wooden tubs and benches, lit by flickering torches. You're squeezed in with merchants, laborers, and maybe a shady traveler or two, all sharing the same murky water. Privacy's a myth, curtains are rare, and everyone's watching everyone else. You're trying to scrub your arms without elbowing your neighbor, but the real challenge is keeping your purse safe. Thieves loved bathhouses. With clothes piled in a corner and everyone distracted, your coins could vanish faster than the soap. And that water. It's warm, sure, but it's been used by half a dozen people before you. You're not just bathing in water, you're bathing in their germs. It's like jumping into a communal petri dish. Then there's the gossip factor. Bathhouses were the village's rumor mill, where secrets spilled faster than the water. If you're seen lingering too long or chatting with the wrong person, tongues will wag. A woman bathing too often might be called vain or worse. A man might be accused of shady dealings. The church didn't help. Some priests preached against bathhouses, calling them dens of vice. You're starting to feel the weight of those judgmental stares, like you're auditioning for a role in the village scandal sheet. Joke number 2. Imagine defending your bathhouse visit to the priest. "Honest, Father, I was just there for the steam." Good luck selling that one. Disease was another worry. You've got that tough skin and immune system from earlier, but bathhouses were flea and lice magnets. Warm, damp, crowded, perfect for pests and the diseases they carried. Some historians think bathhouses spread infections like skin rashes or even plague during bad outbreaks. You're splashing in what you hope is just water, but every itch makes you second-guess your choice. It's not paranoia, it's survival math. A bath might feel good, but catching something nasty could land you in a healer's hut, or worse. Yet, people kept coming. Why? Because bathhouses weren't just about hygiene, they were a break from the grind. You're laughing with friends, swapping news, maybe even sealing a deal over a shared tub. For a moment, you're not a peasant or a merchant. You're just a person, warm and human. It's a rare escape, worth the risks for some. Joke number 3. Picture leaving the bathhouse cleaner but with a new rumor about your love life. Worth it for the soak, right? By now, you're drying off, wondering why anyone bothered with bathhouses when they came with so much baggage. They survived because their bodies were tough, their social bonds were strong, and sometimes a warm soak was worth a little gossip. You're curious about other ways they stayed clean without water, maybe with herbs or something stranger. Let's keep moving. The village has more secrets to spill. You're slipping out of the bathhouse now, the steam and gossip still clinging to you as you step back into the village's muddy lanes. The air's cooler, sharper, with a hint of sage drifting from somewhere nearby. Those bathhouse risks, germs, thieves, and nosy neighbors are fresh in your mind, but you're about to discover another layer of medieval hygiene, the mystical and herbal methods people used to cleanse without water. These weren't just practical tricks. They were steeped in spirituality and folklore, blending plants, prayers, and a touch of magic to keep you presentable and protected. Let's wander into this fragrant, otherworldly side of staying fresh. Picture yourself pausing by a small garden plot, where an old woman is snipping sprigs of rosemary and muttering something that sounds like a prayer. She's not just gardening, she's crafting a charm, a mix of herbs and incantations to ward off evil and odor. Mainstream history tells us that medieval people leaned heavily on plants and spiritual rituals for purification, especially when water was scarce or suspect. Herbs like lavender, mint, or sage were used not just to mask smells, but to protect against disease and bad spirits, which were often seen as one and the same. You're starting to see cleanliness as more than skin deep, it's a blend of body and soul. Here's a quirky tidbit. Some folks tucked pomanders, balls of herbs and spices wrapped in cloth, into their clothes or hung them around their necks. These were like medieval air fresheners, believed to repel miasma and evil spirits while making you smell less like a barnyard. You're probably picturing yourself sporting a pomander like a funky necklace, hoping it covers the fact that your last bath was at Easter. It's not exactly Chanel No. 5, but it's a conversation starter. Joke number 1. Imagine losing your pomander at the market and spending all day sniffing for it. Medieval treasure hunt gone wrong. Historians still argue whether these herbal and spiritual practices were primarily about hygiene or superstition. Some say they were practical, with plants like rosemary offering mild antibacterial benefits. Others argue they were more about comforting rituals, giving people a sense of control in a world full of unseen dangers. Either way, you're clutching a sprig of mint the old woman handed you, half convinced it'll keep the plague and bad luck at bay. It's not science, but it's hope, and in this village, that's half the battle. Let's dive into the details. You're following the old woman's lead, rubbing crushed sage on your wrists to purify your body. It's not a bath, but the sharp, earthy scent cuts through the sweat and grime, making you feel fresher. Herbs were everywhere, tucked into bedding, sewn into clothes, or burned in fires to cleanse the air. If you're feeling fancy, you might mix herbs with fat to make a salve, smearing it on your skin to soothe itches or mask odors. It's like a medieval DIY spa treatment, minus the cucumber slices. The spiritual side's just as big. You're muttering a charm over the herbs, asking for protection from disease or the evil eye. It's part faith, part folklore, and it's as close to clean as you're getting today. Then there's the church's influence. Remember those sermons about vanity? Spiritual cleansing often trumped physical washing. You might sprinkle holy water on your hands before a meal or say a prayer to purify your soul, which was seen as just as important as scrubbing your skin. Some folks believed a clean heart warded off sickness better than a clean body. It's like trading a shower for a good vibe check, different priorities, same goal. Monks and nuns sometimes used herbal smokes during rituals, thinking the fumes chased away demons and disease. You're starting to see why that sage in your pocket feels like a shield. Joke number 2. Picture confessing to your priest that you skipped Mass but burned some mint for spiritual hygiene. Hope he's in a forgiving mood. These methods weren't foolproof. Herbs could mask odors but didn't kill all germs, and prayers didn't stop fleas. Yet, they helped you survive by boosting morale and offering small, practical benefits. Your skin's still doing its job, that natural armor from earlier, and the herbs give it a slight edge against bacteria or pests. Plus, the social signal matters. Carrying a pomander or smelling faintly of lavender says you're trying, even if you're not dunking in a tub. It's like wearing a clean shirt to a Zoom meeting, good enough for the room. By now, you're realizing these herbal and spiritual tricks were more than quirky. They were a lifeline in a world where baths were rare and risky. You're surviving not just on tough skin, but on resourcefulness and belief. You're curious about how this all played out during the Big Bad Plague, and whether bathing made things better or worse. Let's keep moving. The village's history has darker chapters ahead. Joke number 3. Imagine gifting a pomander to your crush, only for them to sneeze and say they're allergic. Medieval romance is rough. You're still wandering the village, the faint scent of sage from that pomander tucked in your tunic lingering as you pass a quiet graveyard tucked behind the church. The herbal charms and prayers are fresh in your mind, but now a heavier shadow falls over your path, the plague. The Black Death and other epidemics loom large in medieval history, and you're wondering how bathing, or the lack of it, played into surviving these horrors. Did skipping baths help or hurt? Let's dive into the paradox of hygiene during the plague and unravel why cleanliness was a double-edged sword in a time of mass death. Picture yourself in the village square, but it's eerily quiet, the usual bustle replaced by shuttered windows and the distant wail of grief. It's 1348, and the plague's grip is tightening. Bodies are carted away, and fear hangs thicker than the usual stench of gutters. Mainstream history tells us the Black Death, caused by the Yersinia pestis bacterium spread by fleas, killed millions across Europe. Hygiene, as we understand it, could have helped. Washing fleas off might have saved lives, but medieval people didn't know about germs. Their bathing habits, already rare, were shaped by fear, superstition, and conflicting advice, making the plague a chaotic test of survival. You're starting to see why a bath wasn't the obvious fix it seems today. Here's a quirky tidbit. Some plague doctors advised against bathing, believing it opened pores to miasma, the bad air blamed for the disease. They'd tell you to stay dry and wrap up tight, even in summer heat, to block the deadly vapors. You're probably picturing yourself sweating in a wool cloak, itching but obedient, while fleas hop merrily along. It's ironic. Modern science says washing could have dislodged those fleas, but back then, a bath was seen as an invitation to death. Joke number 1. Imagine a plague doctor sniffing you and saying, "Good, you're grimy, keep it that way." Worst medical advice ever. Historians still argue whether bathing habits worsened or mitigated the plague's toll. Some say the lack of washing made people flea magnets, fueling the epidemic. Others argue frequent bathing wouldn't have helped much, since fleas thrived in unwashed clothes and bedding, not just skin, and water sources were often contaminated anyway. Either way, you're feeling the dread of those days, clutching your pomander like it's a lifeline, unsure if scrubbing or staying dirty is the safer bet. Let's walk through the plague's chaos. You're avoiding the bathhouse, not because of gossip this time, but because it's shuttered or too risky. Crowds are breeding grounds for disease, and you've heard whispers of whole families falling ill after a communal soak. Instead, you're sticking to dry tricks, wiping down with vinegar-soaked cloths or rubbing your skin with wormwood, a bitter herb thought to repel pestilence. The church is pushing spiritual cleansing, urging you to pray or burn incense to purify the air. Meanwhile, the local healers handing out charms, maybe a dried toad or a scrap of scripture, to wear against your chest. It's a mix of desperation and hope, but none of it's killing the fleas in your straw mattress. Then there's the water problem. Even if you want to bathe, the river's fouler than ever. People are dumping waste faster than usual, and some say the plague's tainting the wells. Boiling water's a luxury you can't afford when firewood's scarce and you're focused on finding food. Bathing might wash off dirt, but it could also expose you to whatever's lurking in the murk. Plus, the humor theory you learned about earlier is screaming caution. Hot water could unbalance your body, making you weaker against the plague's grip. It's like being stuck in a deadly catch. 22. Bathe and risk miasma, or stay dirty and risk fleas. Joke number 2. Picture debating a bath while dodging a flea and a sermon. Medieval multitasking at its worst. Your body's still fighting, though. That tough skin and immune system from earlier are doing their best, even if they're no match for a plague-ridden flea bite. The grime you've built up might actually help. Dirt can clog pores where fleas like to nibble, and your unwashed clothes might trap some pests before they reach you. It's not a perfect defense, but it's something. Survivors often had luck, strong genes, or just avoided the wrong bite. Bathing or not, the plague didn't discriminate. It hit clean nobles and grubby peasants alike. By now, you're realizing the plague made hygiene a paradox. Bathing could have helped but also hurt, and medieval beliefs tipped the scale toward staying dry. You survived by leaning on your body's resilience, herbal hacks, and sheer grit, not by chasing cleanliness. You're curious about how other cultures handled hygiene in this era. Did they fare better or worse? Let's keep moving. The world's bigger than this village, and answers are out there. Joke number 3. Imagine surviving the plague only to realize your pomander's out of sage. Time to raid the garden. You're trudging away from the village's haunted quiet, the shadow of the plague still heavy as you leave the graveyard's somber stones behind. The scent of sage from your pomander is fading, but your curiosity's growing. How did other cultures in the medieval world handle hygiene compared to this muddy corner of Europe? You've seen the grime, the risks, and the rituals that kept European villagers alive, but now you're stepping beyond their borders to explore regional variations in bathing. From steamy Islamic hammams to sparse Nordic dips, let's uncover how different peoples tackled cleanliness and why their approaches mattered. Picture yourself standing at a bustling crossroads, where traders from distant lands swap goods and stories under a blazing sun. To your left, a silk-clad merchant from Baghdad speaks of marble bathhouses. To your right, a fur-wrapped Norseman shrugs off the need for more than a quick river plunge. Mainstream history tells us that medieval hygiene varied widely across cultures, shaped by climate, religion, and resources. While European Christians often shunned frequent bathing, Islamic and Byzantine societies embraced it, and others, like the Norse or Mongols, had their own practical spins. You're starting to see that your village's grimy habits weren't universal. Cleanliness had many faces in the medieval world. Here's a quirky tidbit. In Islamic cities, some hammams offered depilatory paste made from lime and arsenic to remove body hair, seen as a key part of purity. You're probably wincing, imagining slapping that stinging goop on your skin in a steamy bathhouse. It's not a modern waxing session, but it was a badge of cleanliness in a culture that valued ritual purity. Joke number 1. Picture trying to impress a Baghdad trader with your village's vinegar wipe down while they're bragging about their hair-free glow. Talk about a hygiene flex. Historians still argue whether these regional differences led to better health outcomes. Some say Islamic bathing practices reduced disease by keeping skin and clothes cleaner, while others argue Europe's dirtier habits didn't significantly worsen survival rates, given universal threats like fleas or bad water. Either way, you're itching to compare notes as you imagine dipping into a hammam or dodging a Nordic ice bath. The world's a patchwork of hygiene habits, and you're about to explore a few. Let's start with the Islamic world. You're in a Baghdad hammam, a steamy paradise of tiled domes and bubbling fountains. Bathing here isn't just hygiene, it's a religious and social duty. Islam emphasizes ritual purity before prayer, so public bathhouses are packed with people scrubbing with soap made from olive oil or alkali. Hot and cold rooms, massages, and even barber services make this a full-body reset. Unlike your village's murky tubs, the water's often fresh, thanks to advanced aqueducts. You're marveling at the luxury, but it's not all rosy. Hammams could still spread disease in crowds, and the poor often couldn't afford the entry fee. Still, it's a far cry from your river dip at Easter. Now, shift to the Byzantine Empire. You're in Constantinople, where Roman bathing traditions linger in grand thermae. Wealthy Byzantines soak in heated pools, using strigils, curved metal tools, to scrape off dirt and oil. It's like a high-end spa, but even here, bathing's not daily for most. Public baths are popular, but the church, much like in your village, warns against vanity or mixed bathing. You're noticing a pattern. Even cultures that love baths don't always make them routine, and risks like disease or cost keep things in check. Joke number 2. Imagine a Byzantine noble scraping their skin with a strigil and calling it self-care. You'd stick to your sage sprig. Then there's the Norse in Scandinavia. You're by a freezing fjord, watching a Viking strip down for a quick plunge. They're not bath-obsessed, but they value grooming. Combs and ear spoons are common finds in their graves. Saturday was Laggerdag, or washing day, when some dipped in rivers or heated saunas. Climate and resources limit frequent baths, though, and their hygiene leans on practical tricks like linen shifts or herbal rubs, not unlike your village. They're tough, like you, surviving on resilient skin and a low bar for stench. The Mongols, meanwhile, bathed even less, relying on felt clothing to wick sweat and occasional river dips. Their nomadic life made tubs impractical, but they still managed without keeling over. Your village's habits, rare baths, dry scrubbing, herbal hacks, look grim next to a hammam but aren't so different from the Norse or Mongols. Survival hinged on adapting to your environment, not chasing modern cleanliness. Islamic and Byzantine baths might have reduced some risks, but fleas and bad water didn't care about borders. Your tough skin and immune system, those unsung heroes, kept you in the game, no matter where you were. Joke number 3. Picture a Mongol warrior sniffing your pomander and offering you a yak milk wipe-down, cross-cultural hygiene swap gone wild. By now, you're seeing the medieval world as a mosaic of hygiene, each culture balancing belief, resources, and survival. You're wondering why bathing ranked so low when bigger threats loomed. Let's keep moving. The village's dangers are about to put it all in perspective. You're back in the village now, the echoes of far-off hammams and icy fjords fading as you trudge past familiar thatched roofs and the ever-present muck. The world's varied hygiene habits are swirling in your mind, but here, in this gritty corner of Europe, survival wasn't about chasing cleanliness. It was about dodging bigger threats. You've seen how tough skin, herbal tricks, and rare baths kept people alive, but now you're piecing together why bathing ranked so low on the priority list. Let's walk through the medieval world's real dangers and see why a bit of dirt was the least of your worries. Picture yourself standing at the edge of the village, where fields meet forest, and the air carries a chill that hints at winter's approach. You're not thinking about a bath. You're scanning for wolves, bandits, or signs of a bad harvest. Mainstream history tells us that medieval life was a gauntlet of threats. Famine, disease, war, and accidents far outweighed the risks of skipping a scrub. The average lifespan hovered around 35, not because of grime but because starvation, infections, or a stray arrow could end you faster than a lack of soap. You're starting to realize that bathing was a luxury when survival itself was a daily gamble. Here's a quirky tidbit. Some villagers believed getting too clean could weaken you against the elements. A layer of dirt was thought to insulate you, like natural armor against cold or injury. You're probably chuckling, imagining yourself caked in mud as protection from a snowy night. It's not science, but when you're shivering in a drafty hut, any edge feels like a win. Joke number 1. Picture telling your kids to skip their bath to toughen up for winter. Medieval parenting hacks at their finest. Historians still argue whether hygiene's low priority was purely practical or partly cultural. Some say time and resource scarcity made bathing an afterthought compared to securing food or safety. Others point to beliefs, like dirt as a shield or water as a risk, that reinforced the habit of staying grimy. Either way, you're feeling the weight of this world, where a missed meal or a bandit raid loomed larger than a bit of sweat. Let's unpack why survival trumped sparkle. Start with hunger. You're a peasant, and your life revolves around the harvest. A bad season, too much rain, not enough sun, means starvation by spring. You're spending your days plowing, sowing, or guarding crops from pests, not hauling water for a bath. Food is your currency, and every ounce of energy goes to securing it. If you're lucky, you've got bread, beans, and maybe a scrap of meat. If not, you're chewing roots and praying. Bathing won't fill your stomach, and firewood's better spent cooking than heating a tub. It's brutal math. Calories over cleanliness. Then there's disease, and not just the plague. You're dodging dysentery from bad water, fevers from fleas, or infections from a cut gone septic. Your tough skin and immune system, those heroes from earlier, are working overtime, but they can't stop everything. The healer's herbs and prayers help, but medicine's a guessing game. Bathing might wash off some germs, but if the water's foul or the bathhouse is a flea trap, you're trading one risk for another. You're better off sticking to vinegar wipes and hoping for the best. Joke number 2. Imagine choosing between a bath and a bowl of pottage. Spoiler, the pottage wins every time. Violence and accidents were just as deadly. You're living in a world where a lord's feud could burn your village, or a fall from a ladder could break your leg. No antibiotics, no x-rays. Bandits lurk on trade roads, and even a bar brawl could end with a knife in your side. If you're a woman, childbirth's a roll of the dice. With all these threats, scrubbing your skin feels like rearranging deck chairs on the Titanic. Your body's built to handle dirt, but a sword or a bad birth. No amount of sage in your pomander saves you there. Socially, cleanliness wasn't the flex it is today. Nobody's judging your odor when they're just as ripe. Survival was the currency. Bring home grain, avoid the plague, don't anger the Lord. If you're changing your linen or rubbing on herbs, you're doing enough to blend in. Those rare festival baths or noble rosewater tricks were nice but not the goal. You're alive, your kids aren't starving, and the wolves didn't get you. That's the win. Joke number 3. Picture boasting about your clean tunic while dodging a bandit's arrow. Priorities, medieval style. As you stand here, the village fading into twilight, you're seeing the bigger picture. Bathing was rare not because people were lazy, but because life was a constant fight. Your skin, your tricks, your grit, they carried you through. The stars are peeking out now, and the air's growing soft, the day's worries slipping away. You're not clean by modern standards, but you're here, breathing, surviving. The village quiets, a gentle hum of life settling over the huts. You've walked through their world, grime, faith and all, and you've seen how they made it work. Let the night wrap you up now, like a warm blanket, carrying you to rest. No need for a bath tonight. You're tougher than you thought, and the stars don't care. Drift off, safe in the knowledge that survival was their art, and you